So in today's game right now for the welterweights, obviously it's kind of on fire, right? I mean, we got a bunch of names. We just saw Errol Spence come off of a win against Danny Garcia. Personally, it was obviously good to see Errol come back after the car accident, and he looked strong. But I wasn't overly impressed. I don't know what your general reaction was to his performance.
Listen, a little bit of surprise because there were so many unknowns going into that fight. I was actually thinking about putting a little money on Garcia because I'm saying to myself, this guy went through the windshield of a car and was like, I mean, this guy did serious damage to himself. He ain't going to be better than he used to be. That's for sure. He's not going to be a better fighter. Plus, he's coming off a 16-month layoff since he fought Sean Porter.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't know, but you know what? Errol Spence is a special fighter. The same way Tyson Fury is a special fighter. This is a guy that abused himself for 3.5 years with drugs and alcohol and food, and came back, and after a couple of quick tune-ups, gets in the ring with Wilder, who is the boogeyman of the division, and nobody gave Tyson Fury a chance. But that special of a fighter and an athlete and a person, it's a different ballgame. Tyson Fury. That's why I truly believe that Tyson Fury is probably the best heavyweight. He's definitely the best heavyweight since Lennox Lewis, no question about that. But I'd go as far as saying that he might be the best heavyweight since Muhammad Ali. I don't think he's ever going to lose.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think he honestly makes pretty easy work out of Joshua. I really think that even, obviously dominated Wilder in the rematch. But that being said, if I could pick a guy in the heavyweight division that could catch him or beat him right at this moment, it would still be Wilder in my mind, just because he does have this, he can just touch you and it could be over. But I just don't see Joshua like landing a big shot like that. Or
Wilder almost killed him in the 12th round of the first fight. If he got up from that was Wilder's chance. That's it. Fury's absolutely got his number now. I wouldn't even want to see a third fight. It would be a waste of time. It would be a 1-round demolition. It would be a 4 or 5 round demolition job, just like the last fight was.
So with Joshua, do you feel that Fury would just outbox him, or do you think he would march forward like he did against Wilder and look for the finish?
Styles make fights. Obviously, Anthony Joshua is a much more diverse fighter than Wilder is. He isn't a fighter that's just in love with his power. He can box. He gets creative in there. He's technically sound. And I'm sure you noticed in his last fight, he's developed a hell of an uppercut. That's a really dangerous weapon, especially when you're fighting a bigger guy or a guy roughly your size, like a Tyson Fury. So that can be that can be a game changer. And you don't see heavyweights. I can't think of a heavyweight since Riddick Bowe that threw an uppercut as good as Anthony Joshua does. So I think that it's a very interesting fight. I think he's a far more talented guy than Wilder. The interesting part is, if you ask me who wins between Wilder and Joshua, I might pick Wilder.
Yeah,
to catch him on the chin. But as far as Fury and Wilder goes, as far as Fury and Joshua goes, I think that Joshua can give Tyson Fury a lot of trouble. I still pick Fury against anybody. I think he's just so mentally strong and confident in himself that he's always going to find a way to overcome. He's always going to find a way to be victorious. But if anybody can beat him, it's Anthony Joshua.
Yeah, I think that's, definitely fair. And with the confidence that you mentioned with Fury that he has, I just don't see that in Joshua, even though he put on a good performance against Pulev. I think there are moments, I don't know if you would agree, where he, he's not really that killer that he probably was before Ruiz. There's some doubt now, and he knows, he can be hurt, and he's
there is doubt. Obviously, the second fight, and that's not Joshua's problem. The second fight, he got himself in tremendous shape, and Ruiz didn't. Yeah. So he went out there and he did what he had to do. But it wasn't the most impressive victory. He won every single round. He did what he was supposed to do, and he got the win. And I think that got some of his self-confidence back. But I saw remnants of that fight going into the pull-off fight, where he was still being very cautious and very selective those first 3-4 rounds before he really hurt him and started getting real confident, letting his hands go. And then he started looking like the Joshua of old. So maybe
is that a bad thing that he's like that now?
That he's a little tentative?
No. Yeah.
Not necessarily. Because I think he's an intellectual fighter. He has a boxing IQ. He's a cerebral guy to begin with. So I think that, maybe him getting knocked off his high horse might have helped him, because he might have been a little too overconfident. Because remember, he had been hurt before. Besides Klitschko dropping him, he got buzzed against Dillian White. Yeah. He had been hurt before, and he had showed character and overcome those spots and those tough situations and gotten victories before. Wasn't able to do it against Ruiz. So to be able to come back and then beat him in the rematch is definitely a confidence booster. I think that Joshua has shown a lot of character throughout his career now, because that's 3 separate opponents and 3 separate fights that he had to overcome him.
Povetkin as well, I believe, even buzzed
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Povetkin definitely buzzed him as well. So I think it's an excellent fight. I definitely think it's an excellent fight. I mean, there's no way this isn't going to be a one way train wreck one way or the other. I think it's a very competitive fight that might come down to those championship rounds. But I just think that Tyson Fury is just such a special individual. It's not just the skill; it's also the will.
Right.
And the guy is just so confident in himself. I mean, listen, I'm sure you felt the same way that I did going into that Wilder rematch. When he said that he's going to back Wilder up and come to him, I'm like, are you out of your mind? At that point, I pretty much changed my pick. I was in Atlantic City with my buddy. We were going to bet money out the sports book because Wilder was a 2-1 favorite. Then all of a sudden, Fury gets on the scale and he's 270 pounds. And I'm like, and then he gives an interview and he says, no, I'm going to come forward. I'm going to go right to him and I'm going to knock him out. And I'm saying, no way. You don't go after a puncher like that. And him himself, he's going against his natural attributes. He's a guy that sets traps. He's slick. He's quick. He's unorthodox. Him going to Wilder is suicide. Prove me wrong. Couldn't have said what he's going to do. Went out there and did it. So, I mean, that's a level of confidence that a man has in himself in Tyson Fury. Unlike few fighters I've ever seen in my lifetime. So, I mean, you're not just dealing with the skill set and the awkwardness that he brings to the table. You're dealing with an absolute iron will and a level of confidence that he could overcome anything and beat anybody.
Yeah.